You know what it feels like to tell the truth and still end up carrying the blame for the whole conversation. You go in with a clear point, and at the end of it, you are not even standing in the original issue anymore. You're defending your tone, your timing, your wording, your face, your intention, or the fact that you brought it up at all. You can feel yourself working way too hard for something that should have been simple, and the worst part is that you know that it is happening. You can feel the emotional labor, the self-betrayal, the moment where the real issue gets pushed aside and somehow now you're the one carrying all of it. This is the kind of shit that will make you feel insane in private. The humiliation is not what you cannot communicate. It's realizing how much life gets burned trying to make truth land with people who are never going to meet it honestly. You keep thinking that one more sentence will do it. Maybe if you take the edge off, explain it in a calmer way, or add more context, they will finally stop twisting it. Maybe if you make it easier to receive, they will stop punishing you for saying it. And somehow you are still stuck in the same place, exhausted, angry, overthinking, and wondering why the hell this takes so much out of you. I am not talking about communication or some soft little conversation on how to say things better. I'm talking about overexplaining, the self-betrayal inside of it, the fear underneath it, and how much life gets lost trying to earn fairness from people who needed you off balance to start. When you keep overexplaining, part of you is trying to buy safety with better wording. Part of you still believes that if the truth arrives soft enough or carefully enough, the other person will stop doing what they always do. You are trying to get ahead of the blame, shutdown, punishment, withdrawal, coldness, contempt, or that awful feeling of being left emotionally for having a need. This is where you get trapped for years. Not because you're weak, but because your body has learned the truth can cost you something. Connection started feeling conditional. Honesty without padding stopped feeling safe a very long time ago. We are going to drag all of this into the light today. I want to expose the pattern, the wound underneath it, the kind of people who love this in you, and the difference between someone safe and someone who only knows how to feel powerful when you are still proving. If that hit you hard, good, it was supposed to. I'm Meaghan Webster. I'm an abuse recovery coach, a trauma-informed strategist, and the woman a narcissist hopes to never meet twice. This is the Narcissist Worst Nightmare podcast, and today we are talking about why you keep explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. I am not talking about the normal kind of clarification that happens in safe relationships. I am talking about the kind that leaves you drained, self-conscious, and weirdly far away from your own truth by the time it's over. I am talking about these conversations that you started with one clear point and ended up in a whole emotional performance you never meant to do. We're talking about the kind of exchange that makes you walk away thinking, why did I just work that hard for something that was that obvious in the first place? Right now, you are dressing up this pattern in prettier language than what it deserves. You call it patience, maturity, wanting to be clear, trying to communicate effectively. Underneath all of that, a lot of the time is fear. Fear of being blamed, of being shut out, of being called too much, of being abandoned by telling the truth plainly, of what happens next when you stop cushioning reality for people who only know how to receive it when it flatters them. This is not emotional intelligence, it's survival. And if you do not see that clearly, you will keep handing pieces of yourself to conversations that were never safe to hold you at all. So let's call over-explaining what it actually is, because this is where many of you start lying to yourselves. You are not always doing this because you care that deeply about clarity. A lot of the time, you're doing it because part of you is scared. What you are trying to avoid is not confusion. You are trying to avoid the coldness that hits when the other person does not like what you said. You are trying to avoid the eye roll, the energy shift, the shutdown, or the moment you get treated like you are dramatic, aggressive, selfish, negative, impossible, difficult, too much, or hard to deal with. You are trying to outrun the old punishment that used to show up whenever you brought in a need, a standard, a boundary, or some truth that the other person does not want to sit with. This is why that pattern runs deep. You are not just explaining what you mean, you are trying to manage what happens to you after you mean it. Once you see that, a lot of this will start making sense for you. You can know that you're right and still feel panicked about saying it properly. It makes sense that your body starts buzzing before the conversation even happens. When that sentence is clear in your head and then it comes out softened, overqualified, and full of little exits for the other person to take. That you can say something true and instantly feel the urge to backfill, soothe, rescue, justify, rationalize, or make yourself easier to receive. This is not about a lack of intelligence. None of this is happening because you are bad at communication. Your body learned that direct truth costs you something. A lot of people believe that over-explaining makes you the bigger person. It's mature, emotionally aware, thoughtful, fair, deeply committed to being understood. And I get why it looks that way. On the outside, it sounds like a woman doing her best to do this right. Inside, it often feels like shit. It feels frantic, like management, like you are trying to outrun someone else's reaction before it lands. And it feels like your actual point disappears while you work your ass off to make the point more acceptable. It's not maturity, that's fear. And the reason I'm going hard on this topic today is because I've had these conversations with my clients recently. A lot of you are still romanticizing the pattern. You make it sound like proof that you deeply care about communication. But the truth is a lot uglier than that. Over-explaining is often self-abandonment. You leave your own knowing and you go chase the version of the truth that will most likely keep the other person comfortable. You trim your honesty down until it is easy enough for somebody else to swallow. You move away from the actual thing you meant because part of you thinks the original version is too risky. That is not small. That is you practicing betrayal against yourself in real time. And just because it happens through language, through speaking, people miss how serious this is. They think it's just words. It's not. It's identity. It's self-trust. It is whether your body believes you are allowed to be clear without earning the right to it first. A woman who over-explains is often trying to buy safety with effort. I hope that line right there wakes some of you up, because you have spent years trying to earn what was supposed to be mutual. Basic listening, fairness, openness, willingness to sit with another person's truth without turning it into a punishment. If you have had to work that hard to be received, the problem is not your wording, and that is absolute truth. This pattern did not start one day because you randomly decided to use too many words. It got built and shaped over time until your body learned that your truth was not enough on its own. Maybe you got blamed for your reaction instead of what you were reacting to. Maybe your tone got watched more closely than the behavior that it caused. Maybe you learned that if you were hurt, the real problem somehow became how you said you were hurt. Maybe the real issue got dragged sideways until you were left defending your volume, your timing, your facial expressions, your wording, your delivery, your mood, your sensitivity, and your intention instead of the thing that was actually happening. That teaches your body something quickly, that honesty does not stand on its own, that connection can disappear if the truth arrives too raw. That if you want a real shot at care, fairness, repair, or even staying in the room with somebody, you need to package yourself better. That needs are risky, and truth without softening might cost you love, and your first response is too much while you cleaned up a version that was more acceptable for them. So now you start cleaning yourself up before anybody even asks. You reach for context before you reach for conviction. You make disclaimers to things that should have stood alone. You work overtime to make sure what you say cannot be used against you, and then somehow it still gets used against you anyways. That is the point where over-explaining stops being a choice and starts feeling automatic. You are not sitting there thinking, I would love to abandon myself a little bit today. It moves a lot faster than that. Your body jumps in. The sentence shifts while you're saying it. The back pedal gets built in before the truth even finishes landing. You hear yourself padding things in real time, and part of you still cannot stop it because another part of you believes that padding is what keeps connection in the room. This is why this pattern carries so much shame. You know better and still do it. You know the person in front of you does not deserve that much emotional labor, and you still do it. You know the original point was clear, and you still catch yourself turning the sentence into a whole presentation. So shame makes sense. It also keeps you stuck because then you judge yourself instead of understanding the pattern. You call yourself weak, too emotional, pathetic, desperate to be understood, or unable to let things go. The truth is, it's more than just overthinking. Your body is trying to get ahead of a consequence before it sees it. You are not only saying a thing, you are trying to avoid what usually happens after you say it. This is a trauma response. It is a strategy. It is old wiring. It is protective, and it might have made sense for you at one point, but it is costing you your own center. This is why a lot of you can articulate what's happened and still be trapped in the relationship. It's not about being more self-aware or emotionally intelligent. A lot of you think that if you are smart enough, self-aware enough, or emotionally intelligent enough, you should be able to talk your way through abuse or toxic relationships. No, some dynamics are built to keep you talking, to keep you proving. They do not want your truth because your truth would close the door real fast. They want the longer version, the version where you keep trying, keep softening, keep giving context, and keep making yourself available for these conversations. That is how power stays where narcissists like it. Now, this is probably learned behavior far before the relationship that you are in currently. Maybe it was something that you learned growing up or in adulthood. Maybe it came through another partner, a parent, a family system, a friend, a boss, or another relationship where the specifics changed, but the body lessons stayed the same. Different face, same pattern. This is trauma inheritance. You know that, you can stop shaming yourself for having the response and still get serious about interrupting it. Because your body may still reach for extra words automatically, it does not mean that you have to keep obeying it. You need to get brutally honest about the kind of person you're standing in front of. A safe person does not require your depletion before they take you seriously. They do not need 5 versions of the same truth. They do not keep shifting the goalposts so you stay in explanation mode. A safe person will listen, hold space, ask questions if they do not understand, stay in the room, and works with what was said instead of requiring your exhaustion before they decide you are worth hearing out. That is one kind of person. And then there's another. The person that benefits from your confusion, your effort, and the fact that you keep thinking the misunderstanding is accidental. The person likes the door open. An explaining version of you stays engaged, open, trying, handing over context, energy, time. You keep acting like the misunderstanding was just a bump in communication instead of the relationship itself. You keep offering one more chance for fairness to arrive, which means they keep getting access to you long after the issue should have been done. This is why certain people love women who over-explain, not because they care about understanding or accuracy. It's because it's access. I'm going to give you 2 versions of this, one with my ex-husband and one with my boyfriend. With my ex-husband, there was no such thing as a safe conversation. It did not matter whether I was bringing up an emotion, a thought, an opinion, a need, or something simple about my day. The second it came out of my mouth, it was up for a challenge. I was not met with curiosity or care. I was met with pushback, questioning, control, and the kind of energy that made normal conversations fucking expensive. Every conversation cost me something. And I learned that in a lot of very real ways over time, and I'm going to give you some examples. I was at home full-time with Hunter. My business was also at home. We also had a dog. That was my whole life. And the only thing that I ever really did on my own for myself without my son was get my nails done once a month up the street. That was it. One appointment, one small thing, about an hour. Even that had to go on a mutual calendar. And every single time it came up, it turned into this whole scene. I had rules. It had to be after Hunter was asleep or on a Saturday at the right time by his choice. Everything in my life came with restrictions, and he was always the one deciding where the line was. The nail appointments became a massive fight, and this is the kind of thing that people do not understand unless they've lived it. It was never about the nails. It's what happened to my body when even the smallest, most normal asks turned into something that I had to defend. If I wanted to take a client call on a weekend or a holiday or something, it was always a problem. If I wanted to do something that was completely reasonable and normal, it was a fight. I would get challenged, yelled at, bullied, and then I would still be the one standing there trying to justify and rationalize myself as if I was asking for something outrageous. Over time, it does something to you. You do not feel like you're talking to a partner. You feel like you are entering a courtroom every time you open your mouth. And when you've lived that long enough, you learn that it's not safe to talk about anything. I couldn't talk about my mom's dementia, my sobriety, my business, the money that I made. I could never talk about how I felt, what I needed, my opinion on something, or what was happening in my own life because it would be used against me later. This is what I mean by some people do not misunderstand you by accident. They turn your truth into a weapon because that keeps you off balance and in their control. Now, let's compare that to my boyfriend. From the beginning, he has been someone who is genuinely open to conversations of any kind. He wanted to know all of me, my life, my history, my past, the hard parts, the things that made me me, and the things that still hurt. He's always made room for conversation instead of making me pay for it in some way. He listens, he stays present, he holds space. There's been a ton of times that something has happened with my ex-husband, and I don't want to bring that into my relationship, right? I don't want to bring that energy into our space. I did not want to feel like I was dragging old bullshit into something that was really good. And my boyfriend will say, "What do you need? Do you want to talk? I've got time." He makes room without making me feel like I'm asking for too much. But even with something like that, I have to work through my own trauma in my body. He will offer time and space. And in those moments, something comes up for me where I go into a bit of a mental battle. What if he thinks this is the time that it's too much? What if this is the time he's done with the conversation? What if this is the time I push it too far? And that's not about my boyfriend. That is about my history with my ex-husband and the narcissist that I was with before that. That is conditioning. And what it taught me was that conversations were dangerous and honesty came with a price. Now, the difference is I know that I'm safe with my boyfriend. I know that I'm respected, that I'll be listened to. I will be given time and attention and space. And I know that when something real comes up, it will be received with, yes, let's make time for that. I have never had that in a romantic relationship before. To be honest, I haven't had that in a friendship or even with my parents. For me, it does go back that far. I was raised in a world where kids were meant to be seen and not heard. Emotions were supposed to stay quiet. Hard things stayed in the house. You did not talk about them. You did not bring them up. You did not make other people feel uncomfortable by talking about it. So for me, the experience of being with someone safe is not a small thing. It's not just that he listens. It's that my body is getting new information. It's learning that hard conversations does not come with punishment. It's learning that I can be emotional and still be respected. I don't have to justify something when I feel a certain type of way, when I'm hurt, or why it mattered, or why it brought something up in me. I'm learning that with the right person, I don't have to over-explain my humanness to deserve care. And I mean this with my whole heart when I say it. I hope that you get to have this experience one day. I hope that you get to know what it feels like to be with someone where conversation is not threatening, that you get to feel what happens in your nervous system when love and safety and support and feedback are not conditional. I hope you get to experience the kind of safety where you do not have to turn yourself into a perfectly worded version of a human just to be allowed to exist. I am 36 years old, and this is the first relationship where I've ever truly had that. A lot of you still think you're trapped by your hope to be understood. More specifically, you are trapped by your refusal to admit that the person in front of you has no interest in true understanding if true understanding would end the game quickly. Some people need you explaining because explanation keeps you busy. It keeps you in pursuit, improving, it keeps the conversation alive, and it keeps you from doing the one thing that would actually protect you, which is seeing the pattern clearly enough to stop participating in it. Which is why the wrong person does not just tolerate your over-explaining, they feed on it. They get more room, more contact, more emotional access, more chances to twist, and more opportunities to turn your truth into something else. They are trying to keep you off balance. A safe person feels very different. You do not need 12 drafts in your head before you say the thing. You don't need to build a case. You do not need to make yourself tiny in order to be receivable. You do not need to perform pain in a way they cannot possibly misread. You say the thing and the other person stays. I hope me saying that sobers some of you up. Because what you're over-explaining is exposing is not only your wound, it is the quality of your relationship. If you have to keep doing that, what are you standing inside? If truth cannot land without all that work, what are you standing in front of? If you walk away from every hard conversation feeling more confused, smaller, more self-conscious, more wrong, and more desperate to fix your own delivery, what does that tell you about the person on the other side? These types of questions are going to start changing things for you. The real question is not, how do I say this better? It is, who only knows how to stay connected to me when I'm still proving? If you answer that honestly, you will start seeing why this pattern does not break at the level of wording. It breaks when you stop giving your life to people who keep treating your explanation like a doorway instead of a bridge. By the time you have lived inside this pattern long enough, the damage is not just that you use too many words. It shows up in your relationship with your own knowing. Something that was normal at first when it first moved through you feels like it needs backup before it's allowed to stand. You stop trusting the first read, the first sentence, your own reactions, and the first moment your body told you what was happening. Everything starts needing support, more context, more explanation, more proof, more help getting across. After enough of that, you are no longer just over-explaining to another person. You are standing in front of your own truth like it still has to earn its right to exist. And this is where it's going to get ugly. A lot of life gets lost there. You lose time in conversations that should have taken 3 minutes. You lose energy in exchanges that should have never needed that much from you. Peace leaves your body before the conversation is even over because part of you is already trying to work out which version of the truth will cost the least. Then you walk away carrying something that should have never become your burden. And that kind of drain does not stay in one conversation. It gets into your nervous system, your mood. It gets into what kind of patience you have left for the rest of your life. It gets into whether honesty can still feel clean in your body or whether every truthful sentence now comes with a private tax attached to it. And you know that tax. You know what it feels like when the point was so obvious and somehow still took half your day. You know what it feels like to say the thing, say it again, explain what should not have needed explaining, and then leave the conversation trying to work out whether you really said something wrong or whether you just said something true to someone who was not going to receive it well. This is where you are robbed. The point is not complicated. It's not lack of language. It does not need a performance. The point got dragged sideways and you got recruited into helping it drag. The damage does not stop when the conversation ends. You start questioning what you already know because you spent too long performing for people who never wanted a resolution. You look back at something that was super clear in your body before it started acting like it was still up for debate because the other person responded badly. Then your mind gets busy. Maybe the delivery was the problem. Maybe you came in too hard. Maybe you should have waited. Maybe you should have picked a different word, a different time, a different tone. That is self-erosion. Over-explaining is a trauma response, and it teaches you to look outside of yourself for the version that will be finally accepted, which means the other person's reactions start carrying more weight than what you actually knew when you walked in. Once this starts happening, the relationship gets a lot more dangerous. You are not only talking too much at that point, you are handing the other person too much authority over what counts as real. If they stay cold, maybe you are too much. If they get offended, maybe you are too harsh. If they twist it, maybe you were not clear enough. If you walk away, maybe you should have made it easier for them. This is where your truth stops standing on its own and you're waiting to see what happens in the room around you before you decide whether it gets to hold or not. This is how you start losing self-respect. And nobody wants to call this self-destruction while it's happening because it does not look reckless or chaotic or obviously harmful. It looks thoughtful. It looks like you are trying hard to keep a conversation productive, safe, and underneath of it all, self-trust is getting carved out piece by piece. That is why the cost needs to be shown. This is what I mean by the cost to you. Time goes missing. Energy disappears. Peace leaves your body. Self-respect gets hit every time you hear yourself abandoning something you knew was true. Clarity gets thinner when you leave a conversation more confused than when you entered it. Reality itself starts getting shaky because when the pattern gets bad enough, you stop asking what was true and you start asking what version of the truth is the least expensive to tell them. That is a miserable way to live. Some of you have been doing this for so long now that you no longer clock how much it has shaped your emotional life. You can hear it in a way that your own mind works now. Somebody says something dismissive or cold, and instead of staying with the original issue, your thoughts start revisiting your delivery. You begin editing yourself before you even finish the sentence. Disclaimers show up before anybody asks for them. Truth gets padded because part of you is already bracing for what might happen when it lands. When you leave the conversation tired and weirdly get far away from yourself. The level of tired that you feel is not random. You are not only carrying your truth, you are carrying the entire emotional management around your truth. You are trying to say the thing and survive the thing at the same time, and that is why it's exhausting. A lot of women still do not understand how much this changes emotional quality of their lives. The pattern does not stay in a conversation. It starts living around the conversation too. Anticipation. You rehearse it, you replay it, you spend time before the conversation trying to find the least dangerous way to say something honestly, and then you spend time after the conversation trying to clean up what shouldn't actually be needed. That means that the pattern is not only eating the moment itself, it is eating the life around it. You are dealing with a pattern that weakens your first knowing by making outside reactions feel more important than your own clarity. You are dealing with a pattern that can keep you emotionally tied to people who were never safe enough to deserve this much energy from you in the first place. So yes, drag is the cost. So if you do not feel the cost, you are going to keep romanticizing the effort. You will keep calling it things like patience or care when all it's doing is taking your peace, your certainty, and your ability to leave the conversation. Once you finally feel that this has a cost to you, something will start moving. The over-explaining, the justifying, the rationalizing will start feeling like a leak, and it stops feeling like love. Your whole pattern will lose its glamour because you can already see how much you've been paying for it. And this is where things start to turn for my clients because they're choosing to live in reality instead of the fantasy land. Underneath that whole pattern, there is a lie you keep feeding because it sounds prettier than the truth. You tell yourself you're still in it because you care. This is the reality. And this point needs to be usable for you because you could listen to all of this and feel exposed for 20, 30 minutes and then go right back into your pattern the next time that a conversation gets tense. The truth gets shorter. And that does not mean that your heart leaves. It does not mean that you stop caring or that you become flat, hard, or detached. What starts dying is the performance. What loses authority is the compulsion to take your truth more receivable for somebody else who's already shown you. They only know how to meet it when it is wrapped in enough care to keep them comfortable. The shift happens when you stop auditioning for fairness. This is real change. That old version of you still believes one more explanation might build safety. Or maybe this time, if you treat the misunderstanding like a repair project that you're responsible for, it'll be different. The old version hands over more words, more context, more emotional labor, and more access because some part of you still believes the next version might actually land. Then another version of you starts showing up. She says what's true. If the moment genuinely calls for another sentence, she gives it. After that, she stops. The room may like it less. The other person may have a hard time with it. Your body probably will panic more than once. None of that makes this wrong. What makes it usable is that the shift is not vague. You stop carrying both your truth and their reaction to it. You stop acting like honesty only counts if it lands pleasantly. You stop turning every hard moment into a whole emotional production designed to keep the other person open. You stop giving explanation where discernment should have stepped in, and you stop using your own clarity as raw material for another fucking round. That is your sanity coming back online. A lot of women will hear these shorter truths and immediately think that they become hard in the wrong way, that it's icy, bitchy, cold, emotionally dead. That is not what happens when this is healthy. The tenderness stays, the humanity stays. The part that leaves is the compulsion to keep earning the right to be received. That is a different thing. The relief shows up when this starts changing, and it's not small. It is not the relief of finally finding the perfect sentence. It is no longer needing one. You stop asking your words to make an unsafe space survivable. You stop asking your delivery to rescue the relationship what truth exposed. You do not need to save the connection anymore. Your honesty does not have to come wrapped in enough softness to stop the wrong person from being exactly who they are. The urge to over-explain becomes information instead of a command. If your body is desperate to make the sentence more acceptable, the room is telling you something. If the hard conversation leaves you more confused, smaller, more self-conscious, or more invested in fixing your own delivery, that relationship is telling you something. If being honest makes your nervous system want to explain itself into depletion, honesty is not safe in that space yet. Please stop using over-explaining as a tool and start reading it as evidence about the relationship, about the person, about where you still do not trust yourself enough to let your own knowing stand. Less language alone does not heal anybody if your body is still collapsing underneath of it. The real change shows up when you learn how to stay with what you know after somebody pushes on it. Pushback lands. Discomfort moves through the room. The old panic rises. And instead of translating what that means into more explanation, you stay with your truth. This is where self-trust becomes real. It looks beautiful from a distance. Over-explaining is a trauma response, and it is one of the ways you keep abandoning yourself while telling yourself you are being mature. It is one of the ways where fear still gets to run the room, and how you emotionally stay tied to people who have already shown you who they were, and they were never trying to meet you honestly. You did not burn this much life explaining yourself because you care that deeply. You burn this much life away because you feel some part of you still believes that better wording can save you from the cost of telling the truth to the wrong person. This is the part that we have to break up with. If this episode cracks something open in you, good. Please share it with another woman who needs it. Hit follow so you do not miss the next one. Send me a DM on Instagram and tell me what landed hardest for you. You do not need another episode from me with insight that does nothing to keep you safe. You need to leave this episode knowing exactly what has to change. Your truth cannot keep being the thing you trim down, soften, dress up, and hand over so other people stay comfortable while you pay for it in your body later. The pattern does not end when you finally find the perfect sentence. It ends when you stop using your own self-betrayal as the price of staying connected. It ends when you stop confusing over-explaining with love, patience, fairness, or emotional intelligence. It absolutely ends when you stop giving access to people who only know how to feel powerful while you are still proving. So if you have heard yourself in this episode, please do not sit there and tell yourself that you're going to work on it. Do not take another note and then go back to the same conversation with the same patterns tomorrow. Please join us inside of the RRR membership. This is where I help you break the trauma bond underneath all of this, where I help you build self-trust, stop leaving yourself in conversations, and stop reshaping the truth to keep other people comfortable at your expense. I know that you're done with polite self-betrayal and feeling exhausted all the time trying to over-explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. If that is you, the RRR membership is where you need to go next. The link is in the show notes.